Hey, good morning, everybody. It's glad to see you. I get nervous every single week. It never gets where I'm relaxed. But so I'm nervous today, but that's okay. We're gonna do this anyway. We're gonna get nerdy today. I've told you that a few times, so bear with me because there's some things in here that we need to know the definition of. We need to have a greater understanding. So today's gonna be a little bit nerdy, and I'm gonna try my best to talk about some new tools that we have. So I am going to try to work on when I'm telling you things to every now and then tell you where I got them from to help with your study. Oh, shirts. Yep. If y'all see my shirt, they'll be on sale in a couple of days. We're still waiting on the other design because there's one with the girl in the Bible that I saw, but we will have shirts for sale, and it's going to go to a good cause to send me and Carrie Prowse to Turkey. It's a fundraiser for that so that we can study where the apostles go after Jesus is resurrected. Good morning, everybody. Hey, hey, I'm so glad. I love it when y'all say hi. So we're just going to do chapter 10. I'd mentioned that we were going to do 10 and 11, and that's not going to happen. We're just going to do 10. Told you we're going to get nerdy. More than the message behind the section in Jesus' teaching this morning, we're going to dig in and figure out meanings of words. So, yes, it is my cat meowing. It's outside. It's annoying. I know. I can't believe y'all hear it. One of the tools that is going to be super helpful is this, and I know that y'all see it backwards, but this is all I've got. It's called a compact Bible dictionary, or Bible. You don't have to get a compact one. I just like little ones. But this is so helpful when you're reading. And let's say when we were studying about leprosy, I don't really understand what leprosy is. You can just flip through this, and this is going to be more than just a definition. It's almost like an encyclopedia. It's going to be paragraphs of what that's talking about, or maybe like the ceremonial cleansing. You can look that up. Or if a name is mentioned. Today we're going to talk about Samaria. Got information from here. We are going to talk about a few other things zealots. Good information in here. So this is helpful when you're reading and you don't really know what a place is that he says, or somebody's name, or almost anything can be found in here. So go ahead and open your Bibles to chapter 10, get your notes out, and we are going to start with the list of the apostles. And the word apostle, this is the first time that we see it, and it means just to send. He's sending these people out to start. They've been with him for a while. They've seen his miracles. They've seen his healings. They've seen him cast out demons. And now he's saying, you're going to be used. He sends them out 2 by 2. And so we're going to take a look at this list. The list has different names in the different Gospels because remember, in the Jewish culture, and I say remember, I don't really remember what I tell my small group and what I tell y'all. But in the Jewish culture, it is common to have several names. They speak many different languages in the land, and that's just part of their culture. And so it's not different people that the gospel writers are talking about. They're talking about the same person. They're just referring by one of their other names. So let's say I'm getting a message. I don't know. I can't read and talk at the same time. So we've got the 12 apostles. In every gospel, it starts with Peter because he's really the natural born leader, and he's also the oldest one. And we will get to that in a couple of weeks, how we know. But I'm going to wait and save it for that. His name, Simon, means sifting sand. And remember in chapter 7, Jesus talks about building on a firm foundation. And if you build in the sand, when the storms of life come, it's just going to wash you away. But if you build on the rock, then you're going to be secure. And Simon, meaning sifting sand, is later by Jesus called Peter, which means rock. And I think that one of those things that get me teary. I'm not going to cry in front of y'all this morning. But as we look at this list of men, remember they all were dropouts of the rabbinical schools. They made it through the beginning stages and then they got cut. So we know educationally they're not the brightest crayons in the bunch. And then you just, as we get to know them a little more, you're just going to see that they make all kinds of mistakes and their pride gets to them, or maybe they're too angry, or they have so many issues, and we literally watch them transform into somebody new. So we see Peter, who is originally sifting sand, and God is going to make him a rock, and we have a great lesson about that coming up in the next 4 or 5 chapters. So his brother is Andrew, and they are from Bethsaida. You need to remember that. Draw a little bracket, put Bethsaida next to them. And then we have 2 more brothers, James and John. John is probably the youngest disciple. In his book, the Gospel of John, he refers to himself as the one who Jesus loved. And so it is believed that he and Jesus had a very, very, very close, intimate relationship, like almost like he's one of Jesus's faves. He's the baby of the bunch. He was originally called a son of thunder. Him and his brothers just wanted to go and annihilate people who were sinning. But his gospel later becomes the gospel of love. So you just see that transformation again. When you hang out with Jesus, you change. Philip is from Bethsaida too. You need just to have that in your brain for the next couple of weeks and for something coming up. So we've got 30 people from Bethsaida. We've got James, Alphaeus' son, and Thaddeus, who are brothers. Number 11, you have Simon the Zealot. Good morning. He's the second Simon. You got Simon Peter, but then down at the bottom you have Simon the Zealot. So this is where the Bible dictionary comes in handy to find out what a zealot is. They were a political party. You had the Pharisees, you had the Sadducees. Well, you have the zealots, but they are very, very different from the other political figures. A zealot was a fanatical Jewish party. They were militant. They opposed Rome more than any other group of people. They actually thought it was treason against God if you paid tribute to Rome. So this infuriated them, and they were willing to fight unto their death. And you're going to see that even after Jesus, that they bring an uprising against Rome in around 66 AD, and they win for a while, but then Rome just sends in troops and annihilates the entire region. The temple's destroyed, but it was because the zealots were really fighting hard for their Jewish independence. They're known as, they became assassins. If you saw the series AD, they did such a great job at depicting this. There was a man in the crowd that you saw throughout the whole series, and he had this curve-shaped knife, and sometimes you would see him sneak through the crowds and just gut people, and that was called the Sakari knife. And that's what they were known for, to use if you didn't go by Jewish law and exactly like they believed it should have been, then they would just assassinate people. And so all of that grew through the years. Simon was a zealot. I did read that they weren't as zealous at the time, that Simon was the zealot, but after Jesus' death, this grew. But so that's who he was, from a party of assassins. And it's just amazing, again, how Jesus pulls in this motley crew, changes them, and then they go and change the world. It gives us hope. And so there's so many times that just because I work on staff at a church, people think that I've lived this life of perfection and that God chose me because I'm perfect, but it's just completely the opposite. That's why I got teary-eyed the other day. I'm just a sinful girl, not the brightest crayon in the bunch, but I made a decision at 19. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to do this, and then God's taken me on this journey, and here I am today. So God just uses ordinary people who love him and who humble themselves to be used by him, and he'll use them in mighty ways. So encouragement to you this morning. So he goes on, and he says that he gives them instructions on where to go. And he says, don't take any roads leading to other nations, which is Gentile territory. And he says, don't enter Samaria. That's a little bit different because they are part Gentile, but they're still part of the kingdom. And so we're going to spend a little time right now talking about Samaria, because this is not the only time you're going to hear about this. In the Old Testament, Samaria, let me back up. There was the kingdom of Israel. They ended up getting a first king, Saul, and then Saul was overtaken by King David. You know, he slew Goliath. He was just a little shepherd boy. God raised him up to be the king, and then it was through his line that Jesus came. Well, during his son's reign, the kingdom split in half just because of natural political fighting. And so there was the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom until exile. And so they had literally had two different kings, and the northern kingdom was in Samaria, and the capital was Samaria. And so originally this was the northern kingdom, but after the Assyrians came and wiped the northern kingdom out, they exiled the people. They made the people go live in Babylon and neighboring countries, and then they brought their people in to inhabit Samaria. So Samaritans were a combination of the poorest Jewish people that they didn't even bother with. They let them stay in that territory, and then the Assyrians came in and they intermarried, and their offspring were the Samaritans. So to the Jew, this was a mixed race. And they also, their worship was a mixture of worshiping Yahweh and the ways of Yahweh and the pagan ways that the Assyrians brought in. And so, and you know, the Jewish people are snobby. We've seen this already. They dust their feet off after they leave Gentile territory. If you don't follow every letter of the law, then they don't give you the time of day. So to them, Samaritans were despised. And then because of that, Samaritans hated Jews. And there was this great, great racial tension between the two groups. And so that is also a place they were supposed to avoid. The biggest reason they were supposed to avoid this is because, again, the way the Jewish people were, they live completely separate from Gentiles, which God asked them to do that, but they always take things to the extreme. And God knew, if I go and reach the Gentiles first, the Jews will never accept what I have to say. So I'm going to offer this gift of salvation to them first. And so this was just the grace of God again. And even though he knows they're going to reject it, he's going to give them first choice. And then after they reject it, he'll go and allow the disciples to go into Gentile nations. So they are supposed to say to the lost sheep of Israel. I think I covered that pretty much. So, I know what I want to say. Look at verse 12. This is another, God, time goes by so fast. We're almost out of time. In verse 12, he says, greet a household when you enter it, and if the household is worthy, meaning they've accepted the disciples are going to stay with them, let your peace be on it. This word peace means shalom. And this is a very common greeting in Hebrew culture. Whenever even you're walking down the streets, that's how they greet you. Oh, shalom, and you'd say shalom. Well, to us, it's kind of like, hey, hi, how's it going? But that word has such a deeper meaning. So I'm going to kind of give you a list of words. Whenever they say shalom, they're speaking a blessing over you. And this blessing consists of tranquility, safety, well-being, health, contentment, success, comfort, and integrity. And I love that, because don't you want to live with all of those things? I found that information in the Jewish New Testament commentary. I love this commentary because really, they don't really explain like other commentaries what's going on. It's just going to say, you know what, this is so different in our culture. We're going to put this in here and going to explain how different it is. So shalom, peace, means all these things. And this is what they would speak. They would speak this blessing over people who would accept them in their home to stay. Because remember, God told them, don't bring anything with you. I am going to provide all your needs, because I don't want anyone paying anything for this. I want them to know that salvation is a free gift. So, shalom. Back when God created the heavens and the earth, he created a Garden of Eden for man to live in. And that was perfect shalom. It was perfect peace. In fact, there's a place in Texas where they study creation science. And remember, before the flood, there was like this umbrella over the earth. It didn't rain. It was almost like just natural, like if you think of a pyramid dome where there's plants and stuff in, and how it just takes care of itself. You don't have to have it rain. It's just, there's precipitation, and then it comes back down and waters the earth. That's how the earth was before the flood. And this place in Texas that have kind of recreated things through study and science had created a place like this, and they found that even some snakes lost their venom. It was just it's perfect peace. Eden was the perfect place. It was shalom. And after the fall of man, the chaos just came into the world through Satan, our enemy. And this whole entire plan, the entire Bible, this entire plan, salvation, God giving his son to die on a cross from a gruesome death so that we can accept him as our only way to God. This whole plan is so that God can restore shalom on earth. When Jesus comes back, he is going to set up his new kingdom, and it's called the millennial reign. It's going to be 1,000 years that we are going to get to live on earth as he originally intended. It's going to be perfect shalom. And so all of this is to restore the peace that was taken from us in the garden. So then Jesus goes on and talks about persecution and how this is going to come. You're going to be persecuted because of your faith. A couple of things I wanted to point out. One theologian said that this sermon about persecution is written to past, present, and future servants. So this is a message to us. And that was God's intent, not just to be to the 12, but to anyone that was going to serve him afterwards. So he tells them two things. He tells them to be as shrewd as snakes and harmless as doves. And these two things have to go hand in hand. The shrewdness of snakes said that the disciples knew that this meant they are supposed to be silent and strategic in movement. And to be like a dove flees instead of fighting. So my understanding of this is just me speaking now. This is not something I read in anything. My understanding in my little brain is saying that we need to have a strategy when we try to reach the lost. And we're not supposed to just hang around with one person that's not willing to accept and fight and try to convince them. Our job is to bring them the good news, and if they accept, that is awesome. If they don't, then we need to be strategic in who we're going to go next, because there's a lot of people out there that need to hear this and that will accept it. And if we spend all of our time and energy focusing on one person that's not ready, then we can miss a lot of people. And so continue to pray for that person and be a light to them, but we can't make people accept this free gift of salvation. And so we need to be as shrewd as snakes, as harmless as doves. And another, in the Bible Knowledge Commentary, it said that one of these without the other would, if you were just like a dove, you would be naive. And if you were just like a snake, you would be cunning. So the combination of the two creates a perfect balance of what a disciple should look like. So, I wrestled with this next section around verse 34, because he says, "Don't assume that I came to bring peace on earth, for I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." And we have these pretty things at Christmas that say peace on earth. And God he is peace, and he is restoring shalom. It seems like we're just contradicting what we said. What he is saying is he's more concerned about bringing this truth, and this truth is going to bring conflict that ultimately will end in peace, than just to come and make peace right now and let people die and go to hell. So he is okay with bringing this truth into the face. He said it's going to be offensive, but it's worth it in the end, because it's going to bring eternal life to people. But then he goes on and it says man against father, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law. And this sounds just so hopeless almost. And in my small group yesterday, a lot of the girls were bringing up like they experience this in their own home. They either have a father or a husband or a mother that is just constantly belittling them because of their new passion for God's word and their faith. This is God just saying this is going to happen. And then he goes on to say that we need to take up our cross. And I'm out of time, but I'm going to just go take another minute or two, because it says basically to take up your cross. That term, back in the day of this Roman Empire, the Romans would use crucifixion as a form of punishment, and you had to carry your crossbeam all the way up to the place where you were going to be crucified, and you were beaten, and it was horrible, but you had to carry this through the city. It was very humiliating and very difficult. But basically what that means whenever he says you're going to have to take up your cross, it means Jesus died on the cross because it was the will of his Father to die for salvation of mankind. And so what he's saying is you are going to have to do some difficult things in your life because it's going to be the will of the Father to bring salvation to man. And so, I'm sorry, I have a little note coming up. So whenever we die to our cross, that means we're going to sacrifice our own personal desires for success and this great life, and we have to put Jesus first. But that's not always a hard thing or a bad thing, and there's many blessings that come with it. It just means that maybe instead of having something that you've always dreamed of, God is calling you to do something else and to live more simply, or I don't know, it looks different for us all. But I wanted to end with a reminder of Matthew 6. He said, blessed are those who are going to suffer from persecution, for their reward will be great in heaven. Blessed means joyful, and I was kind of chasing this rabbit last night, and there was a great article that I was reading with a lot of scripture to back it up, but they believe that joy in heaven is going to be one of God's blessings, and the more that we serve him, I believe that we will have inner joy here on earth, but great will be our reward in heaven. So this isn't, I don't want to end this on you're going to be persecuted and your family might turn against you. There are going to be souls that are saved. People come to Christ. You are going to have an inner joy. There's nothing like serving the Lord. And so I want you to keep digging in, keep learning about the Lord. I think it's fun. This week alone, I've had conversations be brought up, and I'm like, I know the answer to that. I just read that in Matthew. And I hope the same is true for you too. And I think that God is going to be bringing conversations because you are in his word. And he's going to be bringing people on your path to say something where you can minister to them. Anyway, chapter 11 will be on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you then. Bye.